Okay, well, hello and welcome. Today is May 5th, 2025, and you are watching the FY26 Boise City Department of Arts and History Annual Grant Program Information Session, our first of three and our only virtual session. I'd first like to acknowledge the broader history of the land that we are meeting on today here in Boise. We recognize the ancestral, cultural, traditional, and unceded territories of the Shoshone, Bannock, and Northern Paiute people whose land the city of Boise is on today. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. This is a live information session that is being recorded for future use and reference. A recording of the session will be posted in the coming days on both Arts and History's grant webpage, which I'll show you in a little bit, as well as Arts and History's YouTube channel. So there'll be a couple places you can find this recording. If you like or need subtitles, English language captions are available by clicking on the live transcript button at the bottom of your screen. It's usually bottom right, and then selecting show subtitle. So live transcript and show subtitle. I strongly encourage your questions and ask that you send them via the Q&A box. I believe the chat is disabled, so you can just use the Q&A box for today's purposes. And at the end of the presentation, I'll answer as many questions as possible. Although one caveat here, if your question is really, really specific to your project, I would encourage you to book a one-on-one meeting with me, and I'll share that information here throughout the presentation. Okay, so before jumping into the details of the Arts and History Annual Grant, I just wanted to give a quick introduction. Uh, Before we're all in. So my name is Mackenzie Dunstan, and I serve as the Grants and Outreach Manager for the Boise City Department of Arts and History. I am new to this role. I'm about 6 months in, but I've been with Arts and History for almost 7 years now, and have worked parallel with this program and previous grant managers through the lenses of communications, marketing, programming, and educational work. So definitely not new to this program and the work that maybe former grant recipients who are here today have done, but learning alongside you all if you're brand new and getting well acquainted with this program. I wanted to note that in addition to grants, I also co-manage the Boise City Writer in Residence program with partners at the Boise Public Library and the Cabin. And I also manage all of Arts and History's outreach efforts to connect our diverse communities with our programs and opportunities. So there's a lot of intersection here, a lot of familiarity. So even though new to the role, specifically bringing a lot of knowledge and similar experiences to what we're doing. I also wanted to note that I've been a loyal attendee of Boise's arts and cultural events since moving here about 15 years ago. So maybe if we haven't met formally, it is very likely that I've been in the audience of some of your programs and events, if this is something that you or your organization has been up to for a while. And I firmly believe that the unique experiences that your organizations and you as individuals bring is what makes Boise Boise. And I'm really thrilled to serve our community through this work. So I have some of my contact information up here on the screen. All this is also available online. I'm always happy to connect by phone, email, or in person. And I'm hosting office hours every Thursday and Friday throughout this grant cycle. So if you want to connect on specifics of projects, this is a great way to reach out. And I'll once again share this information more in a little bit. All right, so today we are going to take about the next half hour, maybe max 45 minutes, depending on questions, to review the following things. I want to give an overview of the annual grant program, what it's all about, what its purpose is. I want to talk about criteria. What are we scoring applications on? There's a chance to discuss the types of projects that we've funded or would like to fund. We're going to go through some application basics. There's some new stuff to consider, especially with former applicants. We are moving platforms, so this is something that I want to make sure we're all feeling really good about. I have some suggestions for your proposals, and then time for questions at the end. So once again, as we go, as something springs up for you, please go ahead and put it in the Q&A box. All right, let's start with what is the annual grant program? So the Boise City Department of Arts and History, which if you're not familiar, is a department of the city of Boise. We award about $150,000 every year to support individuals and organizations in arts, history, and cultural fields with all kinds of projects and programs that are designed specifically to benefit the community and Boise residents. So our goal is to align with the mission of the department, which is to well, oh my goodness, to cultivate a distinct sense of place that reflects Boise's rich past, diverse communities, and unique natural setting, and creating opportunities to nurture and sustain Boise's creative economy. We also want to align with the city of Boise in creating a city for everyone. So trying to find opportunities to bring programming and projects that bring people together and build positive relationships and connections across our community. This program is like all of Arts and Histories programs, if you're familiar, is selected, or our applicants are reviewed and selected by a committee made of community members and members of our Arts and History Commission. And they are awarded based on quality, community benefit, alignment with the City of Boise's vision, as discussed, accessibility and management. And we're going to dig into this criteria a little bit more here in a moment. So some backgrounds, details about this program. It has been around for a very long time, actually predates the Department of Arts and History's existence. And we have funded over 500 grant projects and programs, awarding just a little over $2 million in the last 28 years. So really proud to keep this program going, that there continues to be support and investment in this work and granting funds back into our community to do some incredible work. For this year, if you're unfamiliar with the fiscal year for the city of Boise runs from October to September. So we're looking at projects that are happening between October 1, 2025 and September 30th, 2026. That's sort of our window of time. We're accepting applications for projects as they relate to arts, history, and cultural fields. You can request between $1,000 and $5,000 in $500 increments. We do ask that request be no more than 50% of the overall budget. So that request for grant funding is no more than 50%. We process 100% of the grant award for those that are designated recipients. There are a couple tasks that you have to complete, and we'll dig into that a little bit more in a minute. I do want to note, because this has been a question in the past, if you have to be a 501c3, if you have to be a nonprofit, and that is not the case. We award individuals, groups, and organizations that do hold a 501c status and those that do not. So that is not a requirement, and just want to make sure that really clear and upfront. But there are tax implications. So to receive your award, folks do need to fill out a W-9. Once again, we'll get into those details here in a moment. All right, so something that is a little bit different this year for fiscal year 26 is that our total funding is going to be awarded across two opportunities. So it still totals $150,000. This has been consistent for the Department of Arts and History for the last several years, but we are disseminating these funds a little bit differently. So the first way that we are distributing funds is through the annual Arts and History Grant, which is what you're here to learn about today. This, of course, opened May 1 last week and will close on June 16th for those awards between 1,000 and 5,000. And we are dedicated to funding about $120,000 worth of projects and programs in our community. And as mentioned, these are projects that fall between October 25 and September 26. And there's a lot of room for freedom. There's no specific theme. These projects can look a lot of different ways. That is a little bit different, though, for how we are funding that additional $30,000. So the America is turning 250 years old in 2026, and the city of Boise is interested in funding community projects that focus on either a celebration, commemoration, or some sort of reflection of this anniversary. And so we anticipate to open that specific grant opportunity in January 2026, and these would be for programs happening between April and July 2026. So we'll get into more details as they are developed, and so just something to think about if you have an idea that's maybe thinking about America 250. Maybe it's worth holding on to that idea and exploring something else for the annual grant program. I also want to note that if that you are encouraged and welcome to apply for both of these opportunities. And if you are to receive funding for the annual grant opportunity, you are still eligible for the America 250 grant. So just because you get one does not mean you can have the other. You are encouraged to apply for both, and you could potentially receive both depending on your project. So something to think about, something to start planning for if that is of interest to you. All right, so our program timeline is as follows. The grant officially opened on May 1st. That was last Thursday. And it closes on June 16th. That's a Monday. There is a review period that happens with the committee for several weeks, and then the recommendations of that committee are presented to mayor and council. And so that takes up a good chunk of the summertime. But all awardees, or those that are not, any applicant is notified by September 2025. And then first invoices can be submitted by October. And then final reports, which we'll talk more about in a moment, need to be completed within 30 days of your project, but no later than September 1st, 2026. So if awarded, there are some requirements after your award, including a final report, which we'll get into. All right, so let's talk about eligibility. So to be eligible for the Arts and History Annual Grant, you must consider these things. First, your proposal needs to be completed by an individual or representative of your organization or nonprofit, or even a friends group associated with a government agency. It needs to clearly explain and consider how this program or project is going to benefit residents living in Boise city limits. As a small side, your organization can be located outside of Boise, but whatever your event, project, or program is, does need to take place within Boise city limits. We ask that our applicants meet the American for Disabilities Act and comply with the Department of Arts and History's Equal Opportunity Statement, which is that the Boise City Department of Arts and History does not discriminate on it in its programs and activities on the basis of race, religion, national origin, sex, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. And then the final thing is to include the approved budget template, which we'll look at very closely in a moment. And here it is, this approved budget template. So if you are a former applicant or current grant recipient, this will look familiar to you. But this is a somewhat newer requirement for our grant program as we try to standardize and make it as easy as possible to understand sort of the numbers narrative behind your grant application, and for our review committee to best understand how you plan to use your grant funding. So this document is found both on the Arts and History webpage and is included as part of the application. And we're looking at sort of the top section of this right now. So as part of your application, you are required to complete this budget template. It is an Excel document, and you can see that in column A, we have identified some typical items that most of our grant recipients or grant applicants intend to use their funding for. So these things include planning administration, bringing in artists, historians, or other cultural expertise. Sometimes this is technical and production needs. A lot of times it is space and venue rental, as well as marketing and promotion. So a note here is that you don't need to fill out every single one of these rows or columns, only those that apply to your proposal. And we ask that you don't change these initial categories here, but we've left some space down at the bottom. If there are things that do apply to your proposal that you need to identify as part of your budget, that you can do so here. So where it says other expenses, you can change those. But here, please leave them as is and fill out what you can. One other detail here under column E is that the explanation is really valuable. So when you have identified your different budget areas, giving our selection and review committee some more details is really helpful. And once again, we're painting the picture, that numbers narrative. Why are we spending what we're spending on any particular item or venue or whatever it might be? And it can really just help bring clarity to some of the other questions that you'll answer as part of the application. When it comes to cash expenses, these are expenses that you have to pay directly for. This might be something like a speaker fee, equipment that you need to purchase or rent, such as like a portable sound system, or other supplies necessary to the success of your project or event. In-kind and volunteer, which we'll look at a little more on the next slide, but I have noted here. These are expenses that you would normally pay for, but are instead donated or discounted, and this does include volunteer hours. So recent reports from the independent sector with the Do Good Institute actually just announced in April that the value of a volunteer hour is approximately $34.79, which I think is up about 3% from previous years. It hovered around $31. So this is all something to keep in mind as you calculate your in-kind and volunteer hours. All these go into your project expenses. And project expenses does need to match your project income, which we'll look at right now. Okay, so once again, same thing here. You don't necessarily have to fill out every row and column, only fill out these income-related items as they apply to your proposal. This is really looking at both your secured or your confirmed funds and the funds that you are expecting, but maybe don't have in hand quite yet. So we ask you to identify each of those things. And once again, if it doesn't apply, please leave blank. This is also where you're going to note your requested grant funding, which once again can be between $1,000 and $5,000, all in increments of 500. And really emphasizing here, your project expenses must balance and match your project income. And this document is really great. It does have some automatic features. Things start to fill in for you, so you can watch that as you complete the document. It is also a requirement that your grant request cannot exceed 50% of your income. So we can only fund essentially up to half of a overall budget. So an in-kind does count. So something to keep in mind as you complete this document. And one other important thing to mention here is that right now, Arts and Histories Grant Program does not fund operating expenses, things such as rent, utility, and payroll. Our grant funding really focuses on funding projects and programs. Maybe they're part of an existing series of events. Maybe there's something brand new. But at the end of the day, it can't fund operating expenses, which I know is a challenge for many organizations, but just something to keep in mind. And at the end of the day, all of this needs to align with the criteria for the Arts and History Grant Program. Income can be really tricky, or excuse me, budgeting at large can be kind of tricky. So as you come to this stage in your application, if you have any questions, or need support, happy to connect directly and walk through this document. It can be a little challenging as you start to map it out, especially if you're considering what is secured funding and what is expected funding for any given program or project. Okay, let's talk about criteria for this grant. All right, so all proposals that are submitted are evaluated on the following 5 things. and they are evenly weighted. So nothing is weighted as more important than the other. They are evenly distributed in how the scoring proceeds. So the first thing we look at is quality. Second thing we look at is community benefit. The third is alignment to both the City of Boise's mission and Arts and History's mission. We look at accessibility, and then finally, management. So when it comes to quality, for the purposes of this grant, the review panel is really looking at the following information as how they view for quality. Of course, quality also can mean that your uh, proposal is written in, clear language, that the communication is something that the average reader can absorb and understand, which includes all parts of the project. So how the project is including its artistic, historic, and cultural components, and really those details about how the funding will be used. I think there's about a 500-word limit for any given short answer question. So finding that balance between really clear, giving lots of details while still being somewhat concise is really valuable in this grant application. Something else that our review panel is also looking for is biographies that describe the background, experience, and training of those who are going to be essential to the success of your project and program. Though I do want to note that this experience and background and training can come in a lot of different forms. It doesn't necessarily have to be formal education, coming through school or college or certification programs. This can be knowledge or value that is passed down through a community or cultural group, jobs, apprenticeships, or internships, non-traditional settings, or a combination of any of the above. So knowledge arrives from many places, and what we're really looking for here is that you're clearly communicating how you're going to use that knowledge to help the success of your project or program. So the second thing is community benefit. So we really want to understand how your proposal will benefit Boise residents and contribute to our cultural community at large. So you'll have an opportunity in the application to address why your project is meaningful, really capture what is driving your project, what maybe problem you're trying to solve or need you're trying to address, or cool thing you want to bring and elevate and highlight in our community that maybe hasn't had that before, or something you're hoping to continue that you've seen ongoing success and you've seen the value and the meaning behind it and want to keep it going. So once again, clear, concise, with enough detail to make sure that our review panel, who's maybe never heard of your organization or project, can get a good sense of what you mean to do. The other thing that our review panel looks for is your intended audience. So really wanting to understand who are the folks that you want to attract into your project or program, or want to be involved, or who you plan to promote this to. Who do you hope shows up or want to show up in to your project or program? Your project can have a small audience and still have a ton of community benefit. And I would also say that it is totally okay to get really specific about who your intended audience is. While there's this balance of a city for everyone, right? Our city is made up of smaller groups of people with niche and specific interest. So it's okay to sort of draw attention to those things. Some examples might include, youth and families, or maybe you're really wanting to focus on local artists and creatives. Maybe your work is focused on seniors or elders, or maybe a really specific cultural community, or maybe a group with certain accessibility needs. So all those sort of identifying even somewhat demographic factors can be really helpful to our selection committee in understanding who your project or program is hoping to impact. I think that balance between being very intentional about your audience but not exclusionary is going to be valuable for the review panel. All right, so mission alignment. So there are sort of two missions at play here, and for your consideration when you are drafting your proposal. The first is the City of Boise's A City for Everyone, which is really focused on bringing folks together, building positive networks and relationships, and a sense of inclusion and seeing yourself in your community. So that's very key in this proposal effort. The second is that it aligns to the Boise City Department of Arts and History's mission, which has it's very akin, looking at cultivating a distinct sense of place, thinking about our past, our present, and our future, our diverse communities that live here, and of course, the unique natural environment that surrounds us. So these are very broad, and so that maybe brings both its freedoms and its challenges. I would encourage you, if you're wanting a little more direction or maybe a word bank to pull from, going both to the City of Boise's website and Arts and History's website is a great place to start. Just maybe do a little further reading. And once again, these are broad, but I think in the best way. You can describe how your project fits into these missions or underscores these missions for our community. Accessibility is one of the other criteria that we consider. So we're thinking about accessibility in a couple different ways. One is through affordability. So some of the best projects and most frequently awarded projects for this grant have free or very low cost experiences, low cost being about $20 or less per person. And if that is not something that is totally feasible for your organization, um, indicating very clearly where there's opportunities for scholarship or financial aid for participation. So something to keep in mind as you build out your application. We're also considering inclusivity. So does this project offer accommodations or services as they relate to things like hearing and vision, physical accessibility, language translation, scholarship, financial aid, once again, kind of hitting those points, and does align back with our eligibility criteria as it relates to the American for Disabilities Act and our clause about not excluding groups for any given reason. Okay, and finally is management. So these are, the nitty-gritty details, the logistics of your program or project. There's opportunities in the application to list the person or the people responsible for this project and how they are related in their management skills. There's also space to describe your planning process. So um, over the course of the fiscal year, how do you go from, if you are awarded that funding seed to the execution of your project or program, considering, things like venue reservations, any licenses that are needed, and any evaluation that is going to be part of that effort. And then, of course, that complete and balanced budget. So emphasizing again, please use that Excel sheet. It is what the requirement is to fill it out. There are instructions on what to do and making sure that your request for grant funding does not exceed 50% of your overall project expense. Some special considerations, and this is not new, but things that we look for and that our selection panel is keeping an eye on. We really want to make sure that we are providing lots of opportunity, especially for new and emerging organizations or individuals, maybe first-time applicants. So these are things that we are looking for and are things that you can indicate as part of the application. So if you're a first-time applicant, and if you've attended one of these info sessions, that shows us that you're really interested in learning and understanding what the guidelines and criteria are. All those things are positive, although not requirement and not necessarily things that edge someone out over the other. Something we also look at is outcomes related to previous year Arts and History Grant Awards. So on occasion, there might be challenging issues that arise with current recipients, sometimes out of their control. And so that's something that we think about. Thankfully, this is an incredibly rare occurrence. Very rarely do we have any major issues with our grant recipients, and communication is really key. Early communication has helped avoid it, a lot of potential mishaps, as our recipients are really, like I said, amazing, resilient, and resourceful, try to problem solve. But that is something, if there were to be consistent issues, that might be something that is considered when looking at an application. All right, so I've been talking about this review panel kind of throughout. And so I wanted to make that clear that this is part of the Department of Arts and History's efforts toward, community-driven selection and transparency in all of our process. So the community review panel is made of a variety of folks. It does change every single year. So this year we anticipate on having 1 to 2 arts and history commissioners. If you're curious who our commissioners are, you can check out Arts and History's website to learn a little bit more about them. They have not been selected at this moment, who will be participating on the grant panel, but it will be from that list, so 1 or 2 of those folks. We also invite 5 to 6 arts and history practitioners and or community members from diverse experiences. We did a call for grant panelists a year and a half ago, and they went through their own selection process, and so that is the list that we currently pull from. So we try to pick folks who come from a lot of different backgrounds, experiences, ages, to get a good sense of our community's interest and needs, and to make sure that we're bringing forward diverse perspectives, right? Sometimes one person looks at something and notices something that someone else doesn't, and then we come together and have a conversation before any selections are made. I do want to note very clearly that all participants in our review panel are bound by a conflict of interest policy. Any actual or apparent conflicts of interest as they relate to, financial reasons, professional things, personal relationships with an applicant, all that is what we ask for in the beginning to understand, so that we can have the most unbiased review as possible. And in the case that there is some sort of existing relationship, review panelists will refrain from reviewing that particular application to give space for other folks. I also want to plug that I am not part of the review panel, so I guide the process. I help manage sort of the before, during, and after, but I am not a voting member. And we'll talk a little bit more about sort of the benefit to you as an applicant in me not being a voting member as part of the selection panel. As I briefly mentioned before, there's a review timeline here. So the application closes on June 16th. The review panel is then given the applications, every application that is submitted, and they are given at least 4 weeks to review those applications, and they score on a rubric so that the scoring is consistent and once again as unbiased as possible. And it's based on all those guidelines that we've just been covering. From there, those recommendations are brought to both our Arts and History Commission and then Mayor and Council, giving at least 2 weeks for any questions, comments, or additional reviews before we send out notifications to applicants. So once again, that's why you're seeing this big gap between a June close date and a September notification. So it does take some time to review. We often have between 50 and 80 plus applicants for this program. So it's a lot to review, lots of paperwork to get through. So we want to make sure that we're giving it the appropriate and needed time. And like I said, applicants are notified in September. We try to notify by early mid-September so that we can get rolling on all the things especially awardees need, and also provide feedback for those who desire it, who maybe are not awarded. Okay, types of projects. So This grant has awarded all kinds of projects across a variety of mediums. They often fall, but are not limited to experiences in the performing arts, in the visual arts, collaborations between different groups or organizations, initiatives or cultural celebrations from different community cultural groups. There have been some historical and preservation-based projects that have been funded, as well as some literary focused events, community cultural events, lots of educational programs and workshops, and exhibits. So this is not an extensive list, but I would say these are the broad categories that historically this grant program has funded. So, okay, this is a screen with lots of things on it. This is just a screen cap of some of the projects that were funded this past year. I think these are all organizations that were awarded $5,000. And just from even a quick glance, you can get a sense of sort of the diversity of groups and projects and sort of lenses in which they are approaching. So we list out every single grant recipient and a brief summary of their project. So I'll show you where this is in a little bit, but I would highly recommend if you're sort of maybe you're a first-time applicant and you're like, does my project fit? A, would love to have a conversation with you to chat through it, but B, feel free to take a look here and sort of get a sense of what projects have been funded in the past. Maybe your project falls in a similar line. I would say that's not a negative by any sense. It's actually maybe really positive to see that, oh, someone else has funded a literary event, at this sort of location. Like that's a good sign that maybe there's a potential that that will be funded in the future. So yeah, lots of options here. I think I've got, oh yeah, and one more. So these were slightly smaller dollar amounts, but we've got, a small artist nonprofit with a literary project, Flute Fest. So a annual opportunity for flautists to come together and celebrate and do workshops, things like that. Treasure Valley Children's Theater, so funding one of their seasons. Indonesian Idaho, I think actually just had their event, though it said August 25. I think they actually moved that up a little bit for Cultural and Heritage Day. So lots of different opportunities for projects. It's a really diverse selection, and we do try to fund a lot of different things. All right, now into the application. So if you are a former grant recipient, this is a little bit new for you, but it will be okay. And if you're brand new, never applied before, then you're going to learn with the rest of them. So the city of Boise at large has moved to a funding platform called Amplifund, or a grant management platform, I guess, more accurately. So you can access this through Arts and History's webpage, or you can go directly to amplifund.com. Amplifund is very similar to what was previously used, called Zoom grants. There's a lot of similarities there, but I would say so far it is a much smoother user experience. So if you have experienced Zoom grants in the past, I think you're really going to enjoy Amplifund, as it is runs a little nicer for sure. This is also maybe something to be aware of, that if you are part of an organization that has applied for other city grants or opportunities, getting familiar with Amplifund is going to be beneficial because, like I said, the entire city has moved to this system, or this platform. When it comes to the application, our very kind account manager at Amplifund created a tutorial video specifically for Arts and History's grant opportunity. So you can watch this. It's maybe 10 minutes long, and it is a step-by-step instructional video on how to apply, what to expect. And so I would highly recommend taking the 10 minutes to watch that, and I'll show you where that is here in a moment, before you jump into the application yourself. And then there's also a very robust Amplifund user's guide, which is also linked on our webpage. So if you're someone who really likes to get down into the details, learn the true in and outs, you're welcome to use that. I don't think you'll need everything that is in that user guide, but if that is something that appeals to you, it is there as a resource. So this is just a screen cap of what the Arts History Annual Grant opportunity looks like when you enter Amplifund. When you first click apply, you will actually be prompted to make an account. And I would recommend that if your organization has a shared email, that is what you use in creating your account. I will not have access to your account details. We can kind of work on the back end with our partners at Amplifund, sometimes to hunt things down. But it really prevents a lot of future issues if you use a centralized or shared login. So that in case someone leaves the organization or roles and responsibilities shift with members of your team, that you can always access your account and your application going forward. And like I said, if you happen to have any issues with Amplifund along the way, this is a new system for the city at large. Please reach out. We would love to know about those sooner rather than later so we can work with our account manager to resolve any challenges that might pop up. So far, things have been running very smoothly, but you never know. So please reach out. Yep. So just as a quick reminder, when you're coming into Amplifund, you want to, create and log into your account. Use that tutorial video as your guide. It's really great, a wonderful explanation of what to expect and what to do. The application questions, of course, are in the application via Amplifund, but if you would like a preview of those, you can actually find them in the annual grant guidelines document, and I'll show you where that is on the website in a moment. As always, that application budget, really, really important. It's available both on Arts and History's website and is integrated into the application. So there's no missing it wherever you look. And then one other thing to note when it comes to the Amplifund application is that there is an opportunity for some additional attachments. These are completely optional, and I think really are these supplemental documents that you can include if it helps you tell the story of your organization or your project better. Sometimes that 500 word limit is really challenging. So being able to include, the resume of a supporting artist for your project or a letter of recommendation can really help clarify and flesh out some details that maybe you feel like you're not getting as much opportunity to elaborate on in the application proper. And always, if you need assistance, please reach out. And this is anything from tech troubles, navigating this new space, or if there's any other accommodation that you require, such as translation, interpretation, or even physical accommodation, please just reach out to me as soon as possible and happy to remove any barriers that I can. Okay, so if you are awarded, once again, you'll know by September, whatever the result is. There are a couple things that you will be including as part of, after you receive that award. First is you'll have a City of Boise agreement, and really this is just a contractual agreement between you, your organization, and the city that really just outlines the terms of the grant and expectations. We go over this in great detail at a sort of big gathering after awardees are announced. You'll also be provided with additional how-tos and tutorial documents to complete and submit any of these required documents to Amplifund. So W-9, an invoice, all these things we'll go through in more detail with those that are awarded. And once again, you will receive 100% of your grant award after those 3 tasks of signing your agreement and filling out your W-9 are done. In years past, if you were a returning recipient, it's been an 80-20 split, but we have transitioned to awarding 100% of the grant funding upfront to hopefully remove any barriers, make it easy on your side to execute your project or program. Another requirement is, if awarded, is a final report. So when you have completed your project or program, we ask that you submit that within 30 days of the close of your project or no later than September 1st, 2026. And we ask for it in this time frame just to give our team at the city, our fiscal team, time to process any kind of final details regarding your contract or your award. I also like to give folks a heads up that as part of your final reward or final report is to include 5 photographs. And giving this early heads up so that you can plan it or potentially even budget for it in your grant application. If you want to hire a photographer, although that is certainly not necessary, we've had excellent iPhone photos of anybody's, any given event or project taken, and those totally do the job as well. So just like to plant that seed in advance so that you can plan for it or maybe even budget for it as part of your grant award. Okay, a couple suggestions, and then we'll move on to questions. I see a few coming in through the Q&A. Once again, as they come up, please just pop them in there, and I'll answer everything that I can. All right, so when it comes to individuals or small groups or organizations applying, remember that filling out that W-9 is really important, and that there are tax implications associated with that. So something that you will have to report as part of your taxes in the spring. Once again, make sure that you include those in-kind values into your budget, whether that's fundraised dollars, volunteer hours. There's a lot of ways that can look. Donated materials or people's time or services. So please make sure you include that as part of your overall budget. And then this is a really big one, and I think where we've seen maybe some of the more heartbreaking sort of challenges is to confirm your partnerships and collaborators before you apply. So I think we don't want any surprises. We definitely don't want someone you've identified as a partner to be surprised that you've applied and maybe been awarded for a grant. So make sure that, it doesn't maybe have to be as formal as in writing. I think that's up to you and your organization. But make sure that, the folks that you want to work with have awareness and buy-in into the project or program that you're applying to this grant for. One recommendation might be to actually have them review a draft of your grant application before you submit it, just so that, there are no surprises, that it feels good, or if they have additions or suggestions, they can be true collaborators in your project. So something to think about. Some other suggestions, just broadly. So make sure that you review the guidelines and criteria really carefully. Feel free to reference those guidelines and criteria as part of your application as it suits. Questions, we've worked really hard to make sure that questions are broken down in very clean, tight ways so that you can answer each question very directly, and that there's maybe not too much muddling of thoughts. So once again, that clear, concise, but still giving the details necessary to understand the purpose and value of your project is really valuable. As always, get help, whether it's folks from your organization, maybe a trusted friend who you think would give you good feedback. And then I am also a resource. So one of the maybe benefits of me not being a voting member on the review panel is that I can review and provide feedback early on in your application. So please use me as a resource. I am not a voting member, like I said, and so any of my suggestions are purely based on the criteria, which is of course what the panel is judging on. I try to do my best to give great feedback, and we'll talk about sort of the windows of time to do that. But please use me as a resource. I'm happy to help. When it comes to writing your application, it's also okay to connect the dots throughout. There might be some repetitive elements. That's okay. I think once again, if they're something that you're really trying to underscore or make very, very clear to our selection committee, doing that little bit of repeat or building some synergy around an idea or your project is really valuable. I recommend that you draft your answers in a document before actually going into the application and submitting and going through that whole process. I would say, logging in, getting your account set up, but don't feel like you have to immediately rush into submitting your application. It's okay to take some time. You've got a couple weeks to draft and maybe get that review before you submit. And then finally, I think bringing some like strong affirmative language is really valuable in an application. Words like might, maybe, could, uh, don't build as much confidence for a review panel to believe that this project is going to come through and be executed in the way that you, the applicant, intend. So those strong statements of, this is what will be, this is what is happening, is a good way to sort of frame your narrative throughout your application. Okay, and when it comes to feedback, so like I mentioned, I'm offering office hours every Thursday and Friday, Thursday 9 to 11 and Friday 10 to noon. You can book a meeting with me through the website. I'm going to show you that here in 1 second before I get to questions. You can also come to an additional information session. You've already come to one today, so you've gotten all the information that I would otherwise give at these others. But if you want a chance to maybe meet in person or chat more, you're totally, welcome to do that. It is optional to discuss your proposal with me prior to submitting. You don't have to do this, but like I said, I'm happy to be a resource. So please let me know how I can be of service to you. And if you do want feedback, if you would like me to review, my request is that you give me at least very minimum 1 week prior to the deadline. So I think that would be May 9th to review your feedback, but earlier is better. I want to be really thorough and offering suggestions and for you to implement those that feedback as you find appropriate. I will note that when it comes to reviewing, I prefer a Word doc or Google Doc. Either is good for me. I think just make sure that I have the permissions to get in there and be able to make comments or notes. That would be really helpful. Yeah, and if you get the grant, there will be a lot of follow-up afterwards if you are an awardee with instructions and resources on all the next steps. So if you're feeling like, okay, if I get the award, what happens next? Don't worry. We give a lot of direct customer service on what to do and how to do it, especially in our new platform Amplifund. So don't worry about that quite yet, but know that if you are awarded, more information is coming. It is important to think that your grant application will be a continued resource for you. So if you are awarded, it's really good to maybe download a copy once you submit your application so you can keep referencing it and have it as that resource. Once again, don't forget about photographs. So whether that's as simple as snapping a few on your phone or planning to hire a photographer, just keep that in your mind so that you can document all the incredible work that you're up to. Okay, as always, here's my contact information. Mackenzie Dunstan, mdunstan@cityofboise.org, and my phone number. This is also available online, which I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can show you where some of these things live, and then I will answer questions. I see I've got 4 in there already, and if there are any others, please add them now. So I hope that you can see the Arts and History website. So we are looking at sort of our main page here. Under Programs, you'll click on Grants. And where we want to start is with the annual grant program opportunities. So down here. So all the information that we've covered in this information session, they're same information here, maybe some additional details. And if you want to refer back to something really specific, there's some quick links here. This is the annual grant program guidelines. So this is a PDF document. It is an accessible PDF if that's something you need, but it outlines everything from eligibility to sort of programs that we don't typically fund, questions. Also, things are linked in here so you can get more details. this big apply here is where you will actually apply. This will take you to Amplifund and to the City of Boise Arts and History landing page, where you'll be prompted to make your account. And then right underneath it is the Amplifund tutorial video. So once again, I would recommend taking the 10 minutes to watch this so you feel comfortable and confident as you enter the application itself. And then for those of you that want to dive really deep, the Amplifund user guide that can be found here. Once again, all the related details are here. Oh, and one more, if you would like to book a meeting with me under office hours here, if you just click this link, it will send you to my calendar and all the available dates and times. So you just fill out your information and it sends me a notification, and then we will meet on that date and time that you have designated. Let's get into some questions here. Okay, so someone wants to know how many grants can we receive in a fiscal year? We have 3 different projects programs that we would like to apply grants for. Yeah, that's a really good question. So I believe how it has worked historically and will continue to be so is that you should maybe identify one project or program that you would like to put forward. If you are a member of different organizations, let's say you know, are in one nonprofit, but you also have like an individual project, you can apply in those separate ways, but they cannot be the same project. So I think if you're part of one organization and you have 3+ ideas, I think narrow it down to one to put forward. And I would say review those guidelines and criteria, which of those projects aligns most closely or can fit the best is something that I would consider. But if this sounds like maybe an opportunity for us to talk one-on-one too, so if this was your question, maybe using that book a meeting time would be really good, and we can talk about that in more detail. Final thought on this question, when it comes to the 2 opportunities we're providing, so the annual grant and the America 250 opportunity, you can apply for both those opportunities. And once again, even if you're awarded for annual, you are still eligible for the America 250 grant. So something to think about there. Someone wants to know on average how many applications we receive. It does vary year to year, but we have steadily increased in how many applications we receive. It averages, I would say, around like 70 or 80. I am wondering that, you know, federal funding for grant opportunities has been reduced significantly, that if we might potentially see more folks looking to the city of Boise for funding. So it could be really competitive this year, or it could be average numbers, but I'd say it's, yeah, average 60, 70, 80 applicants, applications are received. All right, so recently we completed our final report using Zoom Grants portal. Is that okay, or will we need to resubmit using Amplifund? You do not have to resubmit via Amplifund for a grant final report right now. And I will follow up with you to confirm that I did receive your final report. So no worries there. Are you looking for bios of those working to get the grant, or in the case of performing arts, the bios of the artists you're bringing in? Well, sort of depends on the nature of your project. I think if you are hoping to have funded to bring in a guest artist, then yes, some sort of bio or CV could be really helpful in understanding who this individual is that you would like to bring in. When it comes to the bios of the project managers, once again, this is all optional. I think if it helps you tell the story of your work or your organization, then yes, that could be really helpful. But if you feel like you've explained yourself thoroughly in the application, then I don't think it's necessary. But happy to talk through that more if you're still feeling a little conflicted or unsure. All right. Any other questions? These were great. Thank you so much. No. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for being here today and spending some time with me. Like I said, I am happy to connect, phone, email, in person. I would love to meet you folks, especially those that are I think everyone, if whether you're a returning grant applicant or a first timer, would love to connect and help walk you through. There's some new things here. There's lots of opportunity. So want to make sure that you're feeling prepared and confident to be an applicant in this project. So thanks everyone for being here. Like I said, this will be a recording, so you can follow up for more information using this as a resource or anything on the website. But if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out.